Welcome everybody to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today for our live training event. We're going to be talking about peer review, the cornerstone of academic publishing, how you can survive peer review as an early career researcher, how you can do that, how you can understand the process, and how you can make the peer review process work for you as an author. I'm Gareth Dyke. I run training for a number of different companies, including for our friends and colleagues at Bentham Science Publishers. We will get started in just a moment. We will begin our training. We will talk about peer review. We will talk about peer review as the cornerstone of academic publishing. And I hope to help you in this training to be able to survive as an early career researcher. So, peer review as the basis, as the cornerstone of academic publishing. Our webinar training today, peer review, how to survive as an early career researcher. My name is Gareth Dyke, and as we come up on 5 minutes past the hour, it's time for us to begin our training, our webinar, our presentation for today. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any feedback, please feel free to put that into the chat box down there on the right-hand side of the platform. I certainly hope you can hear me. I certainly hope that the audio is working well. So we will get started and we will begin our discussion of peer review. I'm Gareth. I worked in Ireland, I worked in Southampton in the UK, I worked in Hungary. I am an author. I've published many papers. I also professionally manage the peer review process, working for a number of journals. So I certainly hope that in this training, I will be able to give you some insights on the process, on the peer review process, so that you can better manage the process for yourself as an author the next time you have to go through the peer review process, or the next time you are asked by a journal potentially to perform peer review as an author. What are we going to talk about in our training today? We're going to talk about a number of different issues. Firstly, what is peer review? Secondly, how you can select peer reviewers for your next paper. Thirdly, what those decisions mean. Fourthly, how you can effectively manage peer review, responding effectively to peer review comments that come back on your article. And fifthly, managing rejection and appeals in situations where you may have to deal with rejection as an author. So we'll get started with the content of our training today. I hope that you can all hear me. I hope that the sound quality is good for this training presentation today. Okay, let's get going. Let's talk about peer review, the cornerstone of academic publishing. This presentation, this training presentation, is aimed at helping you to understand and survive the peer review process as an early career researcher. I'm Gareth. I run training for Top Edit. I run training with Bentham Science Publishers. We are going to be discussing the peer review process, how you can manage it, how you can survive it, how you can be effective as an early career researcher. I've written lots of papers. I've managed lots of peer review as a journal editor. So I certainly hope that some of the insights, some of the tricks, some of the tips that we will share with you in this presentation today will help you to better understand the process. We will discuss peer review. We will discuss how to select peer reviewers for your papers. We will discuss what the different editorial decisions that come back from journals mean, and we will discuss how you can respond effectively as an author to peer review. And lastly, perhaps most importantly, we will discuss how you can manage rejection and appeals on your papers. Let's begin then by talking about what peer review is. The basics, what is it, and the different kinds. Peer review is the process by which the integrity of academic journal publishing is maintained. This is the process whereby articles submitted for publication get sent out by journals to other colleagues, other international colleagues working in the field who are going to assess the content of those papers for publication or not. So peer review is the basis, the process used to judge the quality of academic papers submitted for publication in scholarly journals. Peer-reviewed papers are therefore thought to be reliable because they've undergone this process before publication. You should not be sending papers as an author, especially as an early career author, to journals that don't have peer review. That journals that don't use peer review won't be databased. They won't be included in those international databases. They won't be reputable journals. So we are looking at peer review as a process that we can manage. So let's have a look at the different forms of peer review that different journals, different publishers use around the world in different systems. I'm aware that you may already know about the basics of the process. A paper gets sent out to international colleagues who check it, look at the quality, look at the content, make comments which come back to the journal. These are then passed on to you, the author. But how does it work in detail? There are a number of different kinds of peer review that journals use. Completely open, single blind, double blind, transparent, and transferrable. Completely open, that would be where you, the author, and the reviewer both know each other's identity. That's quite uncommon in journal publishing. The most common kind of peer review is single blind peer review, where both you and the editor are often unaware of the reviewer's identity. The editor, of course, will know the reviewer's identity, but you, the author, are unaware of who your reviewer is. The reviewer is also potentially unaware of your identity in the third kind, in double blind peer review. So completely open, that's where both the author and the reviewer know each other's identity. Single blind is where the reviewer knows your identity as the author, but you don't know who the reviewer is. Double blind is where both parties, the reviewer and the author, are unaware of each other's identity. So these are the kinds of peer review that different journals will use, that different publishers will use across the system. And above all, often confidentiality is something that journals want to maintain, especially if they want to make sure that peer reviewers are doing the best possible, most efficient, fairest job. So often it's in the journal and in the author's interest for peer review confidentiality to be maintained. Reviewers hide their identities. Journals may want this. This is blind review, as we've talked about. Editors may want to offer reviewers to get more honest comments. Reviewers may want anonymity so that they can be more honest about papers. And often, of course, as you know, blind review can be open to abuse, too much power in the hands of those peer reviewers. So I encourage you to look at the kinds of peer review that different journals are using. Check which kinds are used by target journals. Choose the kind of peer review which works best for you. Lots of authors in developing countries, in China, in India, for example, tend to opt for double blind because they feel in that system they're unaware of the reviewer is unaware of their identity. That's going to be the fairest way to get their paper assessed for publication in a journal. Another way that you can do this is, of course, totally transparently. You can consider the use of preprint servers, and open peer review systems on journals. What's best for you? The first step in our training today, the first step in our webinar today, is to help you understand the differences between the different models of peer review: completely open, single blind, and double blind. Lots of journals use these different systems. Lots of journals give authors the choice between single blind and double blind peer review. So which will you pick for your next paper? It's a consideration for authors. We also have to think about who the reviewers are going to be. Who are those peer reviewers going to be? They're going to be people currently working in the same field, recently published in the field in which your paper is being submitted in, and they will either be selected by the editor directly, selected by you, the author, or suggested by you, the author, in a cover letter. We'll come back and we'll talk about cover letters in a bit, or system selected. Lots of editors are not subject area specialists, so they pick reviewers for papers using online systems, online search tools. Peer reviewers are asked to critically comment on articles from an academic perspective, from a scientific perspective. They are performing peer review. What are the issues and where are the improvements that are needed? Reviewers are always asked by journals not to comment on the language, not to comment on the English, but this is the number one issue that often peer reviewers do come back to journals and talk about. So this is important also to be aware of as an early career researcher. You may have to get your paper edited, you may have to get your paper checked by a native speaker before submission to a journal to make sure that the English does not become an issue in the peer review process. But don't forget, you can suggest in your cover letter, when you write it to a journal, when you make your submission to a journal, you can make some suggestions in that cover letter as to who you think would be good reviewers for the paper.